rusty on the trigger finger, but we got it going. It's been a minute, but the State of Purple podcast is back. If you're watching the live stream, sorry for the little visual hiccup there, but thank you for joining us on the Friday before wild card playoffs begin for the Minnesota Vikings and I guess the rest of the NFL. It is an exciting time and an exciting time to be a Vikings fan. Welcome to the State of Purple. Hey, Jack, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. We got playoff football to talk about, which we haven't been able to say for 3 years now, if my math is correct.
And home playoff football at that. So it'll be a great opportunity to preview the game, talk about the Vikings and the Giants. But, Jack, we couldn't do it without our friends at SodaStick and sodastick.com. Thank you to SodaStick for sponsoring the State of Purple. They are also giving you an opportunity to take a percentage off your order. All you need to do is head over to sodastick.com. You can pick up your Minnesota sports-inspired goods at sodastick.com today. Take an extra 15% off with the promo code KFAN. Sodastick.com. Jack and I, we got our skull hats on, our colorway hats. We're ready for the game. We're ready to watch it at home. I'm going to be there working. We're going to be rocking and rolling, and SodaStick is going to be with us. They've been with us every step of the way. So thank you to SodaStick. SodaStick.com, promo code KFAN, 15% off. Jack Day. We haven't talked since, I think, before the Christmas break, was it? I mean, we've been busy. I've got a new job, still with the family, but doing some different things. You've been busy, but it's playoff football. We couldn't not have a show this week and preview the Giants game.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think, I don't know, I wanted to kind of start the show off like this because it really seems, and maybe it's just because the algorithms are so good and the algorithms are working against me and trying to get me alone fired up, which if that's the case, it's been working. But I have seen so many more analysts picking the Giants or people favoring the Giants or people favoring Daniel Jones over Kirk Cousins. Dan Orlovsky had a quarterback rankings that was just bizarre to me. I don't know if he's still upset because he forgot what the dimensions of the football field were here in Minnesota and he holds a grudge against the Vikings because of that or what it is, but it's crazy to me. And it's crazy talk because I think, I don't know, there's so much bulletin board material and the Giants are even giving us some. One of their offensive linemen is saying that, oh, it's Midwest people. They're too nice to be loud over there. And I think Vikings fans in the stadium on Sunday, I hope they take offense to that. I hope they put that up on the Jumbotron and that place gets rocking because, and I'm not saying necessarily you got to get rid of your Midwest niceness and convert to a Philadelphia Eagles fan right away, but show some pride, be loud, and make it a good outcome on Sunday.
Well, I'm not worried about that. We have had a little struggle, and it does carry over to the crowd. It's not just the on the field performance, but I'm looking real quick. We have the 3:30 game, the 3:30, 3:40, whatever game you want to call it, has not been kind to the Minnesota Vikings. I guess the very first game of the season was that 3:30 game, the Packers game. Ended up winning that game 23-7. But then you have that Dallas Cowboys game. You lose 40-3. You have the secondary Green Bay Packer game at Lambeau. You lose 41-17. There has been a little sleepiness to these Minnesota Vikings teams, and it did carry over for the Dallas game at least. I was there. It was a sleepy stadium. Like, it was just not ready to go. I think that the opportunity for playoff football, the stakes that are on the line, the home opportunity, and again, against a team I think is probably beatable, or people feel that way, maybe not on the national scene, but Vikings fans, I think, see an opportunity. They're going to be amped up. They're going to be lubed up. They're going to be ready to go. They have a lot of time to tailgate. I don't think it's going to be super duper cold. So get out there early, have some fun, and then head inside and cheer loudly. I'm not too worried about that, despite the track record with Kirk and the team and all these things that the national media is going to say. I don't know if I like that the national media thinks that the Giants have a good shot to upset the Vikings, kind of allows us to take the pressure off, or if we should be offended. How do you sound like you're a little offended?
I am a little offended because it's a 13-win team, and I have some stats for you, actually, these might not be 100% accurate, so I could be wrong, but I believe the math, it's close. And with what I'm talking about, I think it'll show you the numbers. And I think it's funny. Daniel Jones in games that start after 4:25, this is not including primetime games like Monday night and Sunday night games, 1-15 in his career. Where are those stats floating around? Because it's always about Kirk Cousins. Daniel Jones, 0-9 in primetime games, Monday night and Sunday night games. I know it's not a primetime game, but playoffs are as primetime as they get. And Daniel Jones hasn't been great there either. And I wanted to I saw something on ESPN this morning. They were talking about this. The Giants started the season 6-1. They finished 3-6-1 with their wins against the Texans, the Commanders, and the Colts. You want to talk about a fraudulent team, which the Vikings have been labeled this entire season long. Their point differential is -3. You want to know what the Giants is? It's -6. So if we're going to go out and we're going to talk about the Vikings in this way, the Giants are very similar, except they're a worse team with a worse record, with worse playmakers, with a worse quarterback, and two coaches that are, in my opinion, that should be up for Coach of the Year. So I think one coach has done a good job at turning around an issue with Daniel Jones and limiting turnovers and stuff like that, whereas the negatives that we're seeing in Kirk Cousins, I think it's things that have actually been brought out by Kevin O'Connell. And in that Orlovsky article, he said Kirk Cousins has been too aggressive at times this year. When was the last time we were talking about Kirk Cousins being too aggressive? That's why the numbers are a little bit fluky this year. They're not as good as they were in years past. Statistically, one of his worst seasons. And I'm still riding with Kirk Cousins over Daniel Jones any day of the week.
I think you have to, right? I mean, a little more proven record. The reason Kirk gets all the crud is because of the contract. Part of the reason. I guess he got the crud before the contract, but when you have that amount of money tied to your name, you're gonna be getting a little more criticism. You talk about the down season for Kirk. The stats are just behind pace for a normal Kirk Cousins season. But the interceptions, he's got the most interceptions in his entire career this season at 14. So I wonder if that's where Orlovsky's coming from a little bit. Now, when you watch every game like we have, you understand that some of those interceptions are not necessarily Kirk's fault. Some can be attributed. I think there were 2 in one game that were Jalen Reagor kind of mishaps where it could be attributed to the wide receiver. Tipped passes, you could put some of that on the quarterback, but some of that on the wide receiver too. So we won't read too much into that. What we will do is understand that this is a team, clearly we've said all season long, that's a flawed football team. They're not perfect. They're not the team that has been out there and proven a lot throughout the entirety of the season. But I would argue specifically on the NFC side of the playoff bracket that none of these teams have really proven their ability to be bulletproof as you head into the playoffs. The Eagles came back to earth a little bit. Jalen Hurts had that injury. He still didn't look great in their final game, even though they didn't really need it. Whatever you want to say about that. They'll have the bye. They'll be coming off maybe a little rusty, but they've proven that they're vulnerable. Maybe the San Francisco 49ers are probably the hottest team on the NFC side, getting all the opportunities and the predictions, picking them to go to the Super Bowl from that side. But at the end of the day, how much faith can you fully put in Brock Purdy? Right. I mean, he's done enough to get them to this point. He's looked good, but has he looked good, or has he looked good for Mr. Irrelevant? And under the bright lights in this situation, is it going to be different? They're the most well-rounded team, right? So they have that conversation there. At the end of the day, though, I think that the NFC is pretty wide open. You have an opportunity, if the Vikings, to start finally playing your best football, put consistency together, and start it against a team in the Giants who are vulnerable, both against the run and the pass. They have, they can put some pass rush on there, but you have the opportunity with Justin Jefferson to open this thing up over the top, TJ Hawkinson across the middle, Dalvin Cook through the gut, whatever you want to do, you have those opportunities, but you got to do it. And maybe even more importantly, you need to play defense. That's maybe the biggest question for this Vikings team. Do you have confidence, Jack, that they're going to be able to slow down that Giants run game, I guess the two-headed attack, let's call it, with Saquon Barkley, and then the quarterback, Daniel Jones?
Yeah, the last time these two teams played, I'm pretty sure they kept the running attack in check for the most part. I mean, it might have been like 85 yards or something like that for Saquon, but I'll take that. I think anyone in the state of Minnesota will take that. But what killed this team last year was Daniel Jones through the air with a bunch of misfits at wide receiver. I'll give them some bulletin board material over in New York too if they need it. But I'm concerned about the defense. But I will say this: there's weird rumblings coming from TCO Ed Donatello's press conference yesterday. He started the press conference out by saying it's our time to shine. He was quoted saying, "I think you're going to like the way that we play." And I read somewhere that he's putting a lot of the weight on the shoulders of the veterans on this team. I think I read somewhere that Patrick Peterson was kind of handling the vets or handling the group on the back half of the defense, whereas Delvin Tomlinson, I think, was the one for up front. But I don't know. I think that this is going to be a game where we're going to learn about this Vikings defense pretty quickly in the playoffs, whether or not they are able to potentially make some noise in the playoffs. Zadarius Smith is talking about finally being 100% healthy from that knee injury he suffered early on in the season. And I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. That's a couple words that I use all too frequently on this show, but
Right.
I have a good feeling because it's at home. I think we're going to hear a rocking US Bank Stadium, hopefully, going back to what I said. I know players, Christian Darrisaw was one of them that said he didn't want to see fans sitting the entire game. I don't know if you're going to get that wish, but I'm all for it if you can get that to happen instead of all the paper airplanes coming down. And like you said, that's likely going to be a product of what we see on the field. But
Right.
I think in the playoffs, it's as cliche as it sounds. It's stopping the run. First and foremost, you cannot let Saquon Barkley get going because he is the heart and soul of that Giants offense. And I think if you can get Daniel Jones uncomfortable, one of the reasons why Brian Dable has been up for Coach of the Year this year is because he has drastically reduced the amount of turnovers that Daniel Jones has been making. If you can get pressure around Daniel Jones, and maybe not even necessarily, it's not like you have to have a 5 or 6 sack game, but just get in his head, he's a quarterback that will make mistakes. And this Vikings defense prides itself off of turnovers. I'm going to feel a lot better about the Purple winning this game if they're able to create a couple turnovers. I think there was one when they played last. Maybe, I don't know if Daniel Jones threw an interception or not. I think it was the game where Brian Asamoah popped that fumble out and recovered it, but I can't remember if he threw an interception or not.
Right. I mean, so you're hitting on a couple of the big keys, right? They had 2 turnovers. There were 2 turnovers in that game.
So he did throw an interception.
The defense got 2 turnovers. Yep. So you're hitting on some keys of the games there. The first one, obviously, we can talk about is that run game. The Giants essentially have gone the way of their run game this season. They have a handful of games, I think 4 games on the season where they've had over 200 yards rushing in the game, combined yards rushing between the quarterback, the running backs. You have Daniel Jones averaging 5.9 yards per carry. Saquon, I think, is 4.4. And then they got like Matt Breida and Gary Brightwell, and they're both effective. They don't get the opportunities that the first 2 do, but they're effective. And in those games that they've rushed for over 200 yards, they've won all of those games. They also conversely have had 4 games, where they've rushed for less than 100 yards per game. So there really is an opportunity there for the Vikings to look at the blueprint that most recently the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions held the Giants to under 100 yards rushing. Well, what did they do? How did they do that? How did they get Saquon out of his game? How did they take away that the run option? When you have a run option with a quarterback that can hold it and run it, or a dynamic running back that can keep it as well, and he's agile but also powerful. That's a dangerous mix, but how do you do that? And for this team, it really is going to be that, start with that group up front, the defensive line. You mentioned Dalvin Tomlinson and the leadership that he's taking. It is going to be essential for the Vikings to keep their linebackers clean, Jordan Hicks and Eric Kendricks. Don't let that offensive line get up to the second level of blocking. And if you keep those linebackers clean, they can follow Saquon. They can follow that option. They can follow Daniel Jones, and it'll help contain them a little bit. But essentially, Jack, you've said it. I threw out some numbers there. If you stop the run, you stop the Giants. That's got to be the first focal point for this team.
100%. And like I said, Saquon is the heartbeat of that offense. And if you can stop him, get pressure on Daniel Jones, it's going to be a different game. And I'm excited. I feel like we've heard the health statement from Zadarius a couple times this year, which is kind of weird. I feel like he hasn't quite been 100%, but he said he's close at least a couple times. And now
he had a week off, right?
Yes, he did have a week off to kind of get right, and hopefully that's kind of what they're doing with Harrison Smith. I know he's listed as questionable, but it sounded like Ed Donatel, he's essentially said you're not keeping Harrison Smith out of a game of this stature, which I love that attitude. I think that's the attitude everyone in the NFL probably has when you get to the playoffs. But yeah, I agree with you. And on top of it, the Vikings find a way to win this game if they can stop Saquon Barkley, and they have to find ways to limit Daniel Jones. He's going to scramble. He's going to pick up a couple chunk yardage plays. It's just the way that scrambling quarterbacks operate. And Daniel Jones he's sneaky at those 15 to 20 yard runs. I remember was it last year or 2 years ago? He had that like 86 yard run where he was like falling and stumbling, trying to get to the end zone. But I don't know. Like I said, I think I'll top it off with the defensive talk, just sticking with what I said. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I think it starts up front with Harrison Phillips, Delvin Tomlinson, and then getting the pressure from the outside with Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith.
You also mentioned turnovers. Clearly, that is a guiding point for most wins in the National Football League. But I'm going to go with my second bullet point. My second key to winning the game is to scoring early. This team, the Vikings, have proven time and time again. And I think, Jack, we talked about this too. We've always been kind of a proponent because of the way this team functions. If you win the coin toss, and I think even more so than ever before, you accept that opening kickoff. You accept that opening kickoff. You go set the tone and put points on the board on that first drive. Now, I should have figured this out ahead of time. I don't remember them having a successful double dip at halftime where you score in the final 2 minutes of the half, come back, get the second half kickoff, and then score again. I remember much more often them getting that second half kickoff that they deferred to get because that's just what you do, and going 3 and out right out of halftime. That third quarter has been a struggle for the Vikings on offense and defense, and I don't feel like for this specific team with this confidence level that it's an advantage to defer and get the ball back in the second half. So go out there and set the tone. You need to score on your first drive. You need to score on your second drive. You need to score on your third drive. If you're not getting touchdowns every time, you're putting points on the board. That's how you make the Giants more one-dimensional, and you make them have to pass the football as well to keep the ball out of Saquon, make them unbalanced, force their hand a little bit. Easier said than done, but I'm a very big proponent. Let's strip it back a little bit, maybe not the second drive, third drive, but I'm a very big proponent of taking the opening kickoff and putting points on the board right off the bat, specifically in a home game with a crowd base that you're trying to get into it right away. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think kind of taking that one step further, another issue with this team that we've talked about frequently this year is capitalizing on momentum. And they really, going back to what you said, it hasn't really felt like they've been able to do that, even in some of the games that they've lost, going all the way back to week 2 in Philadelphia. The Irv Smith drop, there's a couple other things. I think an interception where they weren't able to capitalize on that. And it's just shooting yourself.
How many times have they got an interception that returns to the red zone? What was the blocked punt that got down to the 2-yard line and you end up kicking a field? I mean, come on, like that can't happen.
Yeah, that just it kills momentum, and this team needs momentum. I like that idea because if they do go down the field and score first, which this team is great at doing, it's going to make that noise level that seems to be the talk of town that much louder. And then you come out at the start of the second half, you get the skull chant going, and you can blow the roof off that stadium if you're winning because your defense is going to be out there on the field. And it just, I agree with you. I think you need to go out, punch them in the mouth first. Brian Daboll is a coach where you need to go out and you punch him in the mouth first, establish that momentum, and hopefully coast your way into a playoff win.
Clear, obvious other key points. You got to be balanced on offense, and that starts with, establishing what you want to do, right? Is it establishing the run game or establishing the pass game? This team's been more successful establishing the pass game and then building mixing in the run game or the extension of the run game. That might be what we want to expand upon a little bit, is not running the ball straight up the gut with Dalvin Cook, but using Dalvin in the screen game out of the backfield, running him to the outside, moving the pocket in a passing situation with Kirk. Those are all the things that we've seen this team find success when they do, but they just don't do it consistently. They don't call it consistently. It's not like they don't do it well. They usually do it well, but they don't do it consistently. I'm curious to see, given the way that the season ended for Justin Jefferson, I think it's important to get him involved early as well, right? Great dominating season. We're talking 2,000 yards. We're talking the record, and then it fizzled. That the one game, the second game my mind's blanking me. Second to last game of the season, Green Bay, right? Goosed basically had barely anything to go there. The last game didn't really matter, so they weren't focal pointing there. He didn't play in the second half. I think that to just give him that little boost of confidence, that swagger that he was operating with leading into that Green Bay game, get him back into that mode. You got to target him early. You got to target him in those situations where he's going to just get in the action right? Don't even give him the jump balls, the 50-50s. Get him across the middle where he's wide open all the time. Let him run in some space, open it up, but get him involved early and let him know that you're going to be a focal point of this offense. You're going to be a focal point of Kirk Cousins, and let the Giants know too that he's not mentally thwarted because of the way the season ended.
Yeah, and the Giants are going to look different in their secondary as well. They have Adoree Jackson, who will be back,
Right.
didn't play in the first game, and Xavier McKinney. And both of those players are huge for them. If you remember, you go back to that Christmas Eve game, I believe Justin Jefferson and Hawkinson combined for like 25 catches, 3 touchdowns, and well over 200 yards. They had a field day against this defense. And I'm not saying that Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson are going to come in and completely shut them down, but it's going to be more challenging to navigate through this defense. And that's what Vikings fans should be excited for right now. They have not brand new, but the first year head coach in Kevin O'Connell. This is his cup of tea. This is what he is supposed to be good at: game planning and creating a playbook against I think they're kind of a middle of the pack defense, but they can get pressure on the quarterback. They're getting some help back on the back end. So I don't think their defense should be taken lightly. But again, the Vikings have the offensive player of the year front runner in Justin Jefferson, and I agree with you 100%. Get him going early and often. He is no stranger to big games. He won a national championship during his days at LSU, and he didn't just help his team win those games. He was putting up like 200 yards and 4 touchdown games to get to the national championship. I believe that was the semifinal game where he just absolutely blew up. I know he had Burrow and Jamar Chase helping him out, but I'm excited to see what Justin Jefferson brings to the table in a playoff game, because he hasn't been to this level yet. He's kind of gotten all the accolades, broken all the records, and now it's his time to shine. The playoffs are here, and I think it's fair to expect a big game out of Justin Jefferson.
The offensive line getting a little more healthy. You know, we made do with what we were able to do, piecemeal together some injuries, some that aren't going to be back. Brian O'Neill done for the season. You have those situations there, but Garrett Bradbury has practiced in full 2 days in a row. Sounds like he's going to be a go. You're going to have an opportunity to have your starting center back in your lineup there, and potentially, we don't know about this one because he still hasn't been activated yet, but Blake Brandell is getting closer. That's going to be key, specifically with Bradbury, to have that experience, that rapport with Kirk Cousins back on the field that they've been missing for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and one thing, taking that one step further, what would we have said last year if we were like praying as Vikings fans to get Garrett Bradbury back on the field? But I will say this, one thing that Bradbury has always been great at, he's had a phenomenal season. He's kind of had the season that, if you've been following the Vikings for the last 3 or 4 years, he's had the season that you were at least hoping to see, where he's in the middle of the pack more. And he's always been dominant in the run game. And I think that's one thing worth noting, because I do feel like Kevin O'Connell is going to want a game plan. They have to utilize Dalvin Cook. If they can establish the run game, it just makes – I know you were talking about how it's kind of flowed better through the passing game, but if you can open up that running attack with Dalvin Cook, where it's not, hey, let's hand it up the middle and let him get maybe a yard or two, get him out in space, like you were saying, whether that's a screen game or outside zone, just get him out in space and let him do his thing. If you're going to run in between the tackles, bring in Alexander Madison. I've always been a believer in that. He's more of that bruiser style than Dalvin Cook. I'm not saying Dalvin Cook can't do that, but it's not his strong suit. And I think that this is the type of game where maybe they've been keeping their cards close to their vest during the regular season, but unleash everything. Whatever you have to do, throw it at the Giants. Let Dalvin Cook get going, because if he can get going, this Vikings offense is virtually unstoppable to stop if you can get that running game going early and often.
I'm excited for a playoff game, a game that matters the most, with the play calling of Kevin O'Connell. I'm not necessarily worried about the situation being too big for him. Obviously, he was involved in the Super Bowl just a year ago. You have that experience there. You have that experience that he's gained through the season here. But the creativity, the difference that we've seen this year, continues to keep me at least confident in the sense that with this game, which I don't think that anyone's saying that the Giants are going to blow out the Vikings. Okay, no 41 donut scenario, no opportunity there. So you keep this game close. If things aren't working, I do trust the ability to adapt and adjust and try something a little bit different. We've seen the creativity and the unique play calling to kind of try and set the tones. But again, just to get you out of a rut, if you do get in that rut, I feel good about that opportunity. Jack, there is always going to be, with Minnesota sports fans, the little thought in the back of your head that, this is going to all fall apart. It's gonna, we've been Cinderella and living up to her pumpkin, and midnight's gonna strike, and this is the game where it's gonna happen. You are of a younger generation, but you've experienced plenty of it. My generation has experienced more. Our parents' generation has experienced even more so. But for every Minnesota sports fan, the thought is just there that it's going to happen, that our hearts are going to be broken. Even with the Minneapolis Miracle, a handful of years ago, it didn't break that curse fully, right? We still have this in our thought, in our mindset. Tell me about that. Do you have that worry that this team is going to show up and just not show up?
I don't, and
Good.
maybe it's because I've watched 17 games of Mr. Calm, Cool, Collected, Kevin O'Connell walking up and down the sidelines now, and I think that should make people feel better. I'm not going to go on the record right now and say that this is a Super Bowl winning team, because I quite frankly, I don't think that's the case. But
Tough to do that. Yeah.
I will go back to what I said a couple weeks ago, or whenever it was that we talked last, and I think it's very important, and I might have to eat my words and actually do this on Sunday if they do end up losing this game, but enjoy the ride. This team has so far went above and beyond and exceeded the expectations that they were given with a first-year head coach, a first-year general manager. I've said this, I've tweeted this. They have executed the competitive rebuild perfectly. That's exactly what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah came in and said that they were going to do from day one. And what he said came to fruition perfectly. They were a 13-4. They're a 13-4 team. From a year ago, it seemed like they couldn't find ways to win these one-score games. Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah came in here. They completely flipped the script. And I think if you're sitting in the state of Minnesota, you have to feel good about the confidence level of this team moving forward. Not necessarily in the playoffs in 2023. In the playoffs for 2023, my motto is just like I said, enjoy the ride. They've exceeded the expectations, and quite frankly, even if they end up losing throughout the playoffs at some point, I think this has been one of, if not the most entertaining Vikings season of my lifetime.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not good for the heart. I know it's not good for the entire, all the hearts of people in the state of Minnesota, because they've been pulling on the heartstrings all season long. But it has been entertaining. I don't know why that was so hard to say together. And just enjoy the ride, because it's been so much fun.
I'll say, though, I will have a tough time enjoying the ride if they were to lose in the first round.
Agreed. I think this is more so me saying if they get past the Giants, which I'm expecting.
Right.
If they lose to the Giants, it's going to leave a sour taste in the mouth after a good and fun season.
It'll take weeks for people to say this, to look back at it and say this was a step forward, because it still feels the same. If they win this game, I think at that point you're playing with house money. No matter who you end up playing in the second round, you win one game, one playoff game, a game that you should win, a home game. I think that then you have the opportunity for the fans to say, okay, this was a successful season right away, no matter what happens in that second round game. Hopefully they continue winning and we continue having these conversations and do that. But if this doesn't go the way of the Vikings on Sunday, I think that fan line is going to be super negative. It's going to be very entertaining. You and I are going to have a lot of critiques and a lot of bad taste in our mouth when we regroup next week to break this thing down. All it takes is one win. That vibe, that mindset, I think not just changes, it gets thrown out the window. If you win one game, people are going to feel better. It's going to be a successful season. But if you drop this first one.
Okay, I have two questions to follow up with that. First and foremost, if the Vikings lose this Sunday, I'll ask both of them. What's your decision on Ed Donatel? Second, if they win on Sunday and they go into San Francisco and they lose 40-3, are you still going to be having those same thoughts in your head?
if they give up 40 points to the 49ers, I'll still have those same thoughts, right? I mean, there's something to be said about the adjustment to the 3-4, not having the full personnel, having another draft, another free agency under your belt to bring in the players that fit. Didn't have a ton of cap space, didn't have a lot of opportunities, had some young players get hurt that you drafted and didn't really contribute as much as you had hoped. That maybe affected and thwarted that transformation into a 3-4 a little bit. So I think that this defense should be able to not allow high level scoring to the Giants. I think that it should be able to not allow high level scoring to Brock Purdy or whoever we may face in the second round. So if it does continue, I think that's a different conversation. But I think that we have calmed ourselves a little bit. It's still not perfect, right? That Packer game was pretty harsh. On the thought process of saying, Donatell needs to be let go right away. Unless it is a blowout like the losses that they've had to the Packers and the Cowboys have been, I don't think that Donatell has to worry. I think you give him the benefit of the doubt, allow him to continue to build. If it happens again next year, yeah, you've had 2 years and this is not working. But I think the idea of the first year, the transition, and the restrictions that may have been put in place, not by anyone's desire or plan. I think that unless it goes very, very south, I think Donatell's safe.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. And also to all the people that want him fired right now, do you really want to put this defense through another schematical change next year and then go through all the growing pains again with them trying to find pieces to fit into this defense with the limited draft resources that they have and the little free agency money that they're going to have?
Right. Yeah, let's not do that if we can. Jack, any final thoughts? We'll close it out here. About a half an hour show for this week, and then we'll get ready to start getting amped up for Sunday. Lots of preparation, lots of mental prep for fans and players alike. But any final thoughts as we head into this weekend?
I really like the Vikings this weekend. I'm against the national media, and I unfortunately, I do feel another 1-score game coming, but I'll give you my final score prediction. I think the Vikings come out on top 27-20. So it's a touchdown win, not a field goal win, which should make you feel a little bit better when our defense is likely out there in the final minutes of the game and Daniel Jones and company are trying to drive down the field to score a touchdown.
I'm feeling the double-digit win, Jack. I hate to jinx it. I hate to, be that guy. But I'm going to be. I think the team has had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. Arguably so have the Giants, right? They've had 2 weeks to prepare for it. The last game had the opportunity to be that double-digit game. And the Giants just marched down the field at the end, and it got dramatic and ended up being a record-setting field goal, blah, blah, blah. All that does, you can't discount that. But I think that this is I like what I'm hearing from TCO with the idea of the veterans stepping up, really carrying the team this week. I like the momentum that this team has built this season, right? Not the last couple of weeks necessarily, but the growth that they have shown. This might be the week that we've been clamoring for all year round, where they finally put a full game together. I feel at least that this is maybe the best opportunity that they have to do that. This is a team that some of them have at least seen the playoffs before. Giants can't really say that, right? I mean, they haven't had successful teams since Saquon is just, I don't know how long it's been since they've been in the playoffs, but it hasn't been in Saquon's career. So you have that opportunity there. Daniel Jones hasn't seen the playoffs. You have the opportunity to, maybe this isn't as big of a spot for you as it is for them. For the first time, we're not talking about Aaron Rodgers having to overcome Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, or not yet, not any of that. So I think that this could be the one. I'm looking in the chat right now. We got Purple and Gold for Day saying 35-21 Vikings win. 35 points is a lot of points, but I might feel 30, right? I might feel 30 points, 30-20, something like that. Get that comfortable win. Victory formation down the stretch. I like all of it. The place is going to be nuts. It's going to be a fun weekend, whether you're watching at home, whether you're at US Bank Stadium. Make sure you're cheering loudly, texting all your friends, having yourself a good time, and reminding Packer fans how comfortable the couch can be this time of year. I mean, it's a good situation. So,
yeah, I hope Jair. I loved PA's tweet. I hope Jair is getting that practice, hitting that gritty from the comfort of his own home during the playoffs.
That's good stuff. All right, Jack, have a great weekend. Enjoy this game. Hopefully we can all enjoy it and we can have some fun. Thank you again to Soda Stick for sponsoring the State of Purple podcast. Looking forward to breaking this thing down, hopefully successfully next week, and not having to tie a bow on the complete season, but turning the page to the second round of the NFL playoffs. Again, thank you, Soda Stick. Thank you, Jack Day. If you want to follow Jack and follow his game day reactions, head over to Twitter. You can follow him at Jack_H_Day. I'll be at the stadium with my social at AJKFAN, and obviously tweeting from the KFAN account as well. But Jack, thanks for the time. Have a great weekend. Skol Vikings. Let's go get this W. We'll see you later.